Hello, my friend. Isn't it good?
I is good.
Sweet. So now, what were you saying now, dude? He sent you.
Oh,
what?
yeah. My buddy Isaac sent me, man, he's such a nice dude. He always sends me like these like little gifts. Like he'll send me like if there's like a new Red Bull, like some weird seasonal thing. And he just sent me Black Rifle Coffee Company espresso with cream, a case of it. And I got to say, man, this may fill the spot of my second sugar-free Red Bull of the day.
I mean, espresso in a can kind of sounds like sacrilege.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it usually, but man, I got to say, it tastes pretty legit.
Well, you got to elaborate there. You're not a fan of espresso,
No.
or espresso in a can.
Espresso in a can usually.
But you're drinking like watermelon flavored Red Bull. I don't know that you can be too like hoity-toity about your caffeine.
Well,
source.
But I am. I don't know. I guess for like any of the canned coffees, you think of like the what was like the first one? It was like Monster to like Java or something.
I don't know, man. Oh,
you remember?
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
I remember that. I mean, I remember you guys drinking that garbage.
Well, I tried it once.
Look, I like espresso. Hey, man, give me a small glass mug, an espresso
small
cup.
glass mug, espresso cup.
You know what I'm saying? Like it looks like a small glass mug. I know it isn't. I mean, you're drinking it from a can.
Well,
so.
I actually poured it over ice, so it's in a glass.
Even worse.
I'll have to bring one over to you.
Not interested.
Very fancy.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad, a podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs, pre-internet mysteries, and trying to raise our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. We are your hosts, Woody Brown.
And Tyler Bentz. Hey, pal.
What's up?
Hate you.
Is that like your new thing? You're just like, you're sitting on like a thumbtack and you're like, I'm just going to, hey, man.
Hey, pal. Hey, before we get started, I know that you have
There's a couple things I want to talk to you about. Okay, yeah. But go ahead.
Okay, so I've been waiting to tell you this so that I could do it on the podcast. And I had a pretty weird thing happen to me the other day. This would have been maybe like a day or two before Halloween. So we were still prime in that Halloween season.
Mm-hmm.
I say that because when I told my wife, she attributed it to
demons.
Everything I was watching.
Yeah.
During the Halloween season. So yes, demons. No, so I'm sitting there, I'm working on this piece of art, and I've scanned it in, so I'm cleaning it up digitally, and I have the big boy, like Wacom Cintiq Pro tablet, or not tablet, but like just the giant 20 whatever inch screen. And so much like I do when I am using a paintbrush and dipping the ink, even when I'm doing it digitally, it's almost worse because I kind of get really tight and really close in on it, Because I mean, it has like the arm on the desk, so I can pull it, as close as I need or whatever. Anyway, all that to say,
whole lot of details.
A whole lot of detail. Well, I'm kind of setting the stage here. So I'm
then I did
drawing
this like symbol, like I was doing these hand symbols that no one can see, but you can hear me talking about. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so I'm working on it, and I have like a really bad habit of like I have to be really cognizant of like my breathing because I'll catch myself like holding my breath because it's so like precise.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so
you don't want like any extra hand movement or something. That is like, okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I've done that since I was like young, but like, especially when I'm working like with a brush and it's like super precise, I'll catch myself
just
and
passed out and you're like, oh God, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, seriously, like I've looked into like, breathing.
Just ordering in some oxygen.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm doing it and I guess I had been holding my breath. Well, this is like really bizarre. And I ask you listeners if you've ever had this, because I certainly have never had anything like this happen. So I'm drawing, and I guess I had finished what I was doing, and so I kind of exhaled. It was not that. It was a regular exhale out of my mouth, and smoke comes out.
Come on.
I swear to God.
Okay, smoke or
No. So listen. So it was so much so that I had, and so keep in mind, in front of my, right in front of my face, probably, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 inches in front of my face is a screen. So it's real bright. Mm-hmm. So you would clearly be able to see. So when I breathed out, it startled me, because it was I see
dead people.
No. It wasn't anything like that. It was huh? It freaked me out, because for a second I was like, is this thing on fire? What's happening here? Mm-hmm. And so I kind of jerked back. And when I did that, I was it took me a full second to figure out what was happening. And when I did, I was like, oh, I just did that. So I did a big breath, and dude, I swear to you, it was like taking a giant vape hit off a Juul or.
Hey, listen, popcorn lung. Here's the thing: you probably just had that's just one of those popcorns popping in.
What are you talking
your lungs,
about?
And it's finally just.
No, I don't vape. I'm just saying it was that much smoke.
No way, dude.
Dude,
a big
I swear,
billowing,
dude, I swear to you, I sat there for probably 30 seconds afterwards, just looking around, what just happened? What was that? It didn't feel paranormal. Didn't feel. I'm not saying any of that. Of course, my wife was like, "Well, I think it's because all this stuff that you're ingesting into your consciousness when you're watching all these horror movies."
I thought she was talking about the just piles and boxes of just random vitamins and
hey, pal, easy.
Energy drinks, because I could get on board with that.
No, but so I ask you, our dear listeners, has anyone encountered this? Because I looked it up and I can't find anything. Of course, all the links just go straight to
what's the there's a movie, there's a movie cover where some kids and then it seems like there's some smoke or something coming out of his.
Oh, you're talking about, well, that's supposed to be ectoplasm.
Okay.
You're talking about I think it's A Haunting in Connecticut.
Something like that. I that looks disgusting, so I haven't watched it.
Well, no, actually, the ectoplasm thing is really fascinating, and I would love to do.
Well, I'm just saying that picture grossed me out.
Oh,
ectoplasm is awesome. I've been a fan of it since, what is that, 85, 86?
There it is. Yep,
Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm. Well, this the real ectoplasm, and I mean it's tied in pretty strongly with what's called spirit photography, but during the spiritualist movement, they would, take these photos during seances and stuff. And I mean, it's funny because it looks just straight up, just cotton, so I'm sure some of those are fake, but it's still super interesting to me. But no, dude, it was I took a huge drag of a cigarette and breathed out. And what was weird about it is when I did it, so when I originally did it, I guess I just kind of barely breathed out, Mm-hmm. But it was enough to sort of startle me, and I immediately sort of, my reflex was just to sort of my head shot back to get a view of what was going on.
Yeah.
And then when I breathed the rest of my breath out, it was so much that I could this is gonna sound weird, but how whenever you would take a huge drag and you would breathe out and it would just be you could feel it, the smoke coming out of your mouth.
I that's a very good descriptive terminology, but me having never smoked a cigarette, I wouldn't know. If you remember, our kids might be listening to this at some point, and so
yeah, I mean, I haven't either,
kids,
but I had friends, who would talk about
Tyler did a very deep dive web search, and apparently that is what it's like to smoke a cigarette.
Yeah, that's what we hear, at least.
You could feel basically what you're saying is you can feel volume. In other words, because my first inkling is, okay, you got all these heat lamps and you
I
got
don't
this
have
thing
heat
that's lit up.
lamps.
Not heat lamps, but you know what I'm saying? Like any kind of, I don't know, screens and stuff. They all have heat, right? And at different points in your room. Now, I keep my office, as you know now, nice and chilly all year long.
True. Yeah.
And so, my first thought was like, okay, well, maybe it was just some like condensation, just as
See, that's what I thought.
Just as a quick example, my son and I went running this morning, and in my headlamp, because it was much colder than typical, just like tons of billowing condensation.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like one of the first things we do when we go out there. We're like, hey, can you see your breath?
And
So
see,
that's but the difference there is you can't ever feel like a volume of something coming out, right?
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because that's what I meant by I had this huge screen in front of me, so I could see it really well. It's like you having your light. If you breathe, it's like it lets you see it. It looks a lot more than if you saw it like without the light.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying basically. So yeah, dude, when I like breathe it, and I didn't have there was no like taste, in my mouth to it. There was no, and the only thing I thought was like, man, I don't know, like, I took vitamins this morning. I take vitamins every day. No, but I thought like, but that was like an hour earlier, so it wouldn't have been like vitamin dust. But and it was so like voluminous. It was so like thick. It was like, from what I hear, it was like people that smoke like cigars. It was like a massive amount of smoke, and I just sat there like completely, not like freaked out or anything. It was just sort of like, what just happened? And I'm still at an absolute loss. So if anybody out there has any explanation,
if anyone else out there has had a psychotic break, let us know about it. No, I'm just kidding around, but seriously,
it's really weird, isn't it?
Yeah, like, how do you keep yourself from just being like, I need to check in somewhere because that's scary.
Again, it didn't. The only thing that I can sort of like for my brain to like sort of like wrap my brain around it is like I was like sort of holding my breath. So I don't know.
The only thing I can think of, okay, again, this is a very loose, and I'm scientific, and gosh, Clay.
I'm a scientist.
Clay would definitely have a much more eloquent and scientific sort of explanation for this. Yeah, more insightful and more technical. But essentially, like I said, all those varying temperatures inside of your office, you holding your breath and that moisture being built up. I don't know, dude. Even that, as I'm saying it out loud.
Yeah, but there's no, other than like, I have two iMacs in front of me. And
let me ask a question. Did you possibly
vape that morning?
Yeah, no, listen to this, bro.
Huh.
What if? Did you have any missing time? Was there any kind of missing time involved?
Nothing like that.
But maybe it was so fast, right?
It was like
to you, it
imperceptible.
was imperceptible. But there was like some sort of switch or glitch that rhymed. That kind of sounded cool.
Because my daughter was sitting in the studio with me, staring at her iPad.
But if there's infinite parallel universes, I'm just saying maybe you just kind of popped into one that's pretty close. By the way, my name's Rudy Brown. God, I wish I would have known that you were going to say this, because then I would have just introduced myself with a slightly different name. See, I gotta. I'm going to text Courtney and say, look, if anything like that ever happens again, let's really lay into this on him and just like make it weird.
You're so stupid. So you're saying
you walk into your house and it's like pictures of me and Courtney as husband and wife.
it's like the Office episode where like
Jim switches it with that dude. Yeah, that's amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah, maybe there's like an alternate universe that was right beside me that sort of merged, where I'd taken up like heavy vaping, and I just took a big drag and then came right back.
Yeah,
and it was still there.
What's weird is like, I'm going to side with Courtney a little bit on this.
Oh, come on.
No, but listen though, man, because we have to tell. Listen, dude, we've already tried to record this episode before, but what happened? Crazy stuff started happening. The last couple of episodes, crazy stuff started happening in the studio, man. Mm-hmm. So maybe us talking about all this stuff, man, is doing what we always talk about, which is like giving it energy.
Speaking of this, and boy, we're far away from the dock at this point, but we'll get to it.
Well, you think so, but there's actually a correlation. You brought up ectoplasm. We're talking about Ghostbusters. That has something to do with what we're going to be talking about today. So keep going.
Okay. So I had this theory the other day, and there's something about it that is like really kind of like scary to me. So the idea of like doppelgangers and like, you know, again, here's the drinking game, Tim Marchenko's Disembodied Voices book. You know, that idea of like a mimic or someone like mimicking behavior of like a loved one, you know, to gain like access or to like lure you out or whatever. So that idea has always kind of freaked me out.
Yeah.
So I had this idea the other day of, and if you're a first-time listener, just go back. But and welcome. But we talk about this fairly often, the idea of and it's a Tibetan concept originally, but the idea of like tulpas and like thought forms. It's this idea that, you know, you put enough thought into something and you create it. And I'm not going where you think I am because I want to save that for another episode. But kind of like the Philip experiment, you know, I think we talked about one time where this group of researchers basically all got together and they did like a seance talking to a character that they all made up, right? So they created this guy named Philip. He was alive around this time. He died because of this. He wore this. His hair color was this. They created this whole character, and then they started really playing into doing these like sort of mock seances, and then they started actually like seeing this character like in the house or whatever. And so anyway, so it's this idea that I had the other day. It just like totally pops in my head, and I was like, oh my God, I've never thought of that. You know, we think of like, I'm going to go to Gettysburg, and there's, you know, if you go over this ridge, you know, this is where like this 15-year-old boy who was fighting for the Union was shot, and they say that you can see him like walking, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So yes, more than likely that's what they call like a residual haunt. So it's almost like, again, stone tape theory. You're just sort of watching a replaying of like what this soldier would have done in his life. Or it's this idea that what if what we know of like, quote unquote, like ghosts are not really ghosts at all, but they start out as like myths or like as urban legends or stories, or like, oh, if you go to this house at midnight on a full moon, you're going to see this lady who, you know, had a really gruesome death in this house. And then people claim they go, and then they claim they see the thing. So my thought is what if there's no such thing as ghosts at all? And what if all of these things are started with an inkling of like imagination or like, and it all starts as like an idea. And then the more like thought that goes into these things, it's similar to the Philip experiment. What if all these ghosts are literally all like tulpas created from stories that people tell, and then like, you know, people tell other people and people tell other people, and then it becomes like a tangible thing, and that's what we know of as like ghost. But they're actually all just thought forms that we've all created.
Well, two things. One, that is almost equally terrifying, because think about the power that we accidentally may have to create such things.
Right.
Number two, this is the part of the show where I start talking about the crazy fact that I just found $2 million right on my desk.
Amen.
So let's all start thinking about that. No, dude, I mean, it's interesting because there is this like potential sort of, intersection of that kind of idea mixed with sort of like relatively mainstream sort of positive thinking, you know, like books like The Secret and all of that sort of frame of thinking, to where whatever you put out into the universe, you know, you're going to get, kind of thing. And so, I don't know.
Well, and the scary part is like, okay, so if that is true, this is where it's kind of like, it gets a little creepy for me, because like, okay, say that is fact. Say 50 years from now, with science and parapsychology and all this stuff, like we figure out, and physics and stuff, we figure out that this is the case. These are these things that are created. So if that's the case, then you have one of two things. You have this character who truly believes that he is a Civil War 15-year-old who was shot in this battle and blah, 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 blah. And he's roaming around, this area. Mm-hmm. So either that's the case, or we're creating these things and we're putting this thought into them, but we're just creating these random tulpas. So not only are they basically like ghosts that were created by thought, but they're also now ghosts that are like playing along or mimicking these stories that we've like made up. And to me, there's something.
And they don't know that that's what they are. They're just living that role.
Well, no. I'm saying, so either that's the case or it is a nefarious thing and they're playing along to lure people. Mm. You know what I'm saying?
I got one for you too, man. What if we're the tulpa?
I mean, you never know. I mean, we kind of are, as far as if you look into like simulation theory, I think.
Well, it's funny that we're talking about the power of creating and how things could potentially manifest in reality, because if that's the case, well, it's kind of scary, because what I wanted to talk about today, man, was some Stranger Things stuff.
Ooh, I love it.
A couple different reasons why. Number one,
after these messages, we'll be right back.
This is Amy Poehler. My new movie, Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2, is coming to theaters June 14th, and it's making me feel joy and sadness and anger, definitely some disgust, and I think a little fear. But I'm also feeling these new emotions like anxiety, embarrassment, envy, and ennui.
It's what you call the boredom.
Okay, that one was weird. It's going to be the feel everything movie of the summer. Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2, rated PG, parental guidance suggested. Only in theaters June 14th. Get tickets now.
America's future can be determined by our dreams and our visions.
It was very intense, bright light.
For over 200 years, there have been reports of giant man-like creatures
from another dimension, another world. I don't know.
The most intriguing mystery on the North American continent.
Hey, this is Bryce Johnson from the Bigfoot Collectors Club, and you're listening to Tyler and Woody on That Would Be Rad, because that is rad.
You got to talk about the experience, because I've been waiting like a week.
Yeah, no. Like, that's what I'm saying. Number one, me having gone to the Stranger Things experience and just kind of getting revamped and re-energized of all things Stranger Things. Now, I've kind of slowly been leaning in that direction anyway, because, like I've said before on the show, my son and I have, started watching it from season 1. Now, season 4 is taking a lot longer to get through because it's a lot more intense. And so I make him watch those episodes with me so that I can like, whoop, cover your ass kind of thing. And he just doesn't like the gruesome.
Yeah, my wife, Courtney, we're like huge Stranger Things fans, and she still hasn't finished season 4 because of all like the,
it's just like, too intense, man. I mean, like that, if
it's like straight up horror.
Yeah.
Especially those scenes.
My criticism of it was that it was just too much, man.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, but before, like, to me, I think and I mean spoilers, I guess at this point, but when they show, to me, there's something about like when they show like,
hold on. If you haven't watched Stranger Things 4 or season 4, whatever you want to call it, now's a good time to just kind of like take it easy for a second. Maybe I'll splice in a timestamp right here of where you should start again.
Move to the timestamp, 25 minutes, 5 seconds of this episode, to remain spoiler-free.
Okay, good. But like to me, when you see like Vecna and he's in his like the like nightmare realm and like he's like full body like all messed up. To me, that's way less. I feel like if they would have continued on that road, which is sort of like playing up a little bit of like the 80s campiness horror.
Yeah.
I think that's perfect. But then to me, like all the more like cerebral, like the clocks in the walls and like the
I dig that.
No, I love it. But I'm saying for like any sort of like younger audiences.
Yeah,
and
I mean
like
that's not the problem, dude. Like
the
even
necks
Woodrow
breaking and
did
stuff.
that. Here we go.
That's the thing.
Like,
yeah.
And then like the jaw, like the eyes popping out. Like that's the stuff that like, they did like this. And it was the worst, dude. They did like a flashback scene from one of the first kills or whatever that happens, and I didn't catch it in time. I didn't know that's what was going to happen, kind of thing. And Woodrow just saw like a little snippet of it, and he was like, and he just like pressed stop and started crying. Dude, it was awful.
Yeah.
So all of that to say, headed into the experience, this is something I got him as like a birthday present.
Well, explain it first, because a lot of people may not know about this.
Okay. So basically, in a few select cities, I think L.A., New York, and now Atlanta, and maybe Dallas for all you Texas listeners. I think you might want to check on that. I could be wrong. I think there may be just like a pop-up merch shop, which that's worth it alone. But this is essentially like this immersive experience that they kind of choose these gigantic warehouses in these cities and they fully build them out. And it's kind of like multi-part. First
So cool.
is like an actual immersive experience that I'll explain later. If you want me to, I'll give you spoilers. That's up to Tyler. Whether or not I say it, I don't know, man. I don't want to, I want people to be surprised, so I can maybe do like a general description of what happens. And then after you get done, the immersive part's about 45 minutes long. And you're literally, the short version of it is, you feel like you're in Stranger Things, man.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then,
so it's like a big like haunted house almost type setup. I mean, not like an actual house, but like you're walking through.
That's what I was kind of expecting and kind of nervous and worried about. But no, I'll get to that in just a second. But then after the 45-minute sort of experience that you do with like another small group of people, you end up in this big area that's just, they have like Scoops Ahoy, Surfer Boy Pizza, which by the way, if you do go to the experience, skip the pizza. It was awful. They have like a family video store, and then they have like people like, paid sort of young actors kind of just, in this part of the thing as well. So there's like merch shops and you can go and experience these places. But then like the young actor at like the video store, for example, is like, hey, so like me and my friends are making the new, they're like playing along. Role playing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And now do the actors, like, are they intentionally trying to look like?
Yeah, like everybody's dressed 80s, dude, and they're like,
no, but I mean,
not
like,
characters of the show, but no, just like people that would be in Hawkins.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
And then there's just like stuff that you can only get there in terms of merch and stuff, which is pretty cool. Anyways, it's kind of a pricey experience, but completely worth it. Let me break down a little bit. It's going to be relatively spoiler-free, the immersive experience. Basically, you start out and the premise is that you're a Hawkins resident that is going to be participating in a sleep study program at the Hawkins National Laboratory. Even whenever you get in there, it's cool because this like video pops up, and this isn't not a spoiler, but Paul Reiser, there's these like TVs and stuff and everything, dude. I'm talking, it looks the part. Man. You're outside of this like, just like a commercial building, it seems like. But, of course, you're inside this facility, but it looks like you're outside on the street waiting to get into the lab. And these TVs play, and it's him, and he's like, okay, hey, we hope that if you did bring your VHS camcorders, that you'll go ahead and stow those away. We don't want anything to kind of ruin the scientific approach that we take. You know what I'm saying? So that's what their way of saying, like, put your phone away. And so they're like, I don't have any pictures or any video of the actual experience, which is cool. And I want to keep it like secret like that. But there's really kind of like a couple phases. You go into these different rooms. I will tell you that one of them is the freaking rainbow room.
I was about to say, did they have the rainbow?
Oh yeah, dude. And man, I don't know. I wish I could spoil it just because visually and interactive wise, it's one of the coolest things that we've ever experienced. And we just, went to Disney a couple weeks ago, and it's like that level of detail, if not better.
Okay, so without spoiling it, does it put you in a position where you're able to use like the power to like move stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
Move stuff and some other powers too, man.
Okay.
And some of the most, like the best 3D effects that I've ever experienced.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It was really, really cool.
That's amazing.
And
yeah, I hate that I missed it, man.
Again, spoiler free. The good news is does not dive into the season 4 like intensity. It's about like seasons 1 through 3 kind of level, which is it was perfect, dude. Perfect.
That's awesome. Yeah, that to me that was the thing that was a little bit, and it's funny because we've talked about doing a Stranger Things episode forever, but to me that was the thing. I mean, I still liked season 4. I think the like production value and mainly like the cinematography.
Oh yeah, man, really cool stuff.
They jumped a level on season 4, but at the same time, it's like, and I get it, like kids grow up, but as a dad with like little kids, it's just kind of a bummer to see like these beloved kids that you see, you know, and they're so little, like, you know, 4 seasons
Season 1,
ago.
dude, is just like they're so small. Yeah,
they're tiny, and now it's like every line that every kid has like a cuss word, and I get it. It's all like growing up, and it's all like, but I just feel like they, I don't know. I wish they would have sort of kept the naivete like going a little.
Well, you know, it's funny that you say that, man. Rewatching it, I don't know, man. It feels pretty natural, man. Believe it or not. I don't know. Watching it with kind of after the first time watching it and rewatching it again, it kind of feels like, oh yeah, I mean, this is pretty real in terms of like, this is what a high school kid would do. And I don't know. And it's way better than I remembered, especially if you take out like the just super intense stuff, you know?
Yeah.
If you could remove that, man, I think that would be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. It's basically what we were talking about the other day with Shazam.
Yeah.
The Shazam movie.
Exactly.
Would be like a perfect, like big version of a superhero movie. But then there's the boardroom scene.
Yeah.
That is the most like over the top, like demons, and well, I can't show my kids that.
Yeah, right. Well, and I mean, we laughed about it. I think like I text you, hey man, I'm about to watch Shazam for movie night. This was like right when it came out. And then for whatever reason, you didn't text me back until literally right after we had just seen that scene. You're like, whoa, whatever you do, dude, make sure you fast forward it through the boardroom scene. I was like, already saw it, pal.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good, man.
Yeah, it's intense.
All right, so let me say this. So the part of the reason, and all of our listeners probably can kind of gauge this already, we love Stranger Things. And part of the reason is we've always felt like it was, and I think most of the audience that loves Stranger Things feels the same way we do. It's like, man, these are people that they grew up just like us. You know, they had the exact same influences. They're creating something that's very much similar to like what Tyler and I would do or would want to do if we were in their shoes, basically creating a show. And I kind of stumbled upon this thing that I had not seen yet. And I thought I wanted to kind of like talk about it because you hadn't seen it either. And I'm not sure if some of the listeners have or not. So I thought we'd dive into essentially the early stages of Stranger Things, as well as a bunch of facts about some of the things that influenced the Duffer brothers, some trivia about those different things, like different movies and that kind of thing, that I love these movies. And I did not know some of these things.
I love it. Yeah. We've said since season 1, like a new season would come out, and every single time Woody and I always end up with just saying like, man, they get it. They totally get it. Because like what you were saying, it's like we were really, really fortunate. And I feel kind of bad for our kids. And you know, it is part of a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing when we say it on the intro, like, you know, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were in the 80s. But I do feel very lucky that we were able to experience the 80s in that way, that I don't think kids will never have that again, you know?
Yeah.
And so like this show just like really nails it, and it really like captures a lot of those things that, you know, that doesn't come off as like like basically, case in point, doesn't come off like Wonder Woman 2, where it's somebody writing a show or a movie that has no idea about like how the 80s really were.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, I think you're supposed to be wearing a fanny pack here.
Right, exactly.
You know? Yeah, man. And like the level of detail that these guys put into their work and stuff, one of the things that we oftentimes said was like, dude, these guys have like a direct input into my brain. How is this possible? You know?
Right.
And I think that's what connected us with the show very quickly. And, you know, to your point, like, I think part of our goals as parents, and like you said, we say in the intro, not just like half as cool as we were back in the 80s, that's probably the best that we can do, but we're doing a pretty strong job in terms of like kind of showing them the important things that were important to us whenever we were kids, you know, like video games. And that's part of the reason why like my son's like obsessed with, you know, Stranger Things, but also just like that time period and all that because of how different it is. And, you know, it's kind of cool because you can kind of say like, you can kind of use it, you know, if they're like playing video games too long, you're like, look, man, whenever we were kids, you know, look at the guys from Stranger Things. Like they just go outside and create things and use their imagination and go on these adventures and stuff, you know, and I don't know. So anyway, one of the things that folks might not know if they're not in any form or I guess any way associated with like the entertainment industry, we'll say, is that before a show is kind of given the green light, the creators have to create sort of like a pitch. You know, if you're in the corporate world, like a pitch deck is commonly, that's what it's called there. Everybody's got a different sort of term for it, you know? It's where you're just pitch like...
package sometimes.
Yeah. A lookbook if you're in the fashion world. A sizzle reel if you're, you know, a cinematographer. Things that
brand guide if you're doing graphic design.
Exactly. It's a way for you to present your idea using things that either already exist or whatever so that you can kind of show the vibe. Well, in shows and stuff, oftentimes they're just called like the pitch Bible or, you know, show Bible or whatever. Well, luckily, and, you know, magic of the internet and people leaking these types of things, you can find the actual Stranger Things show Bible now online.
That's amazing.
And so I got to say, man, like even this detail, and this just speaks to how much the Duffer brothers pay attention to every single piece of detail. And again, how similar they are to Tyler and I. Like, if you look at this thing, hold on, you know what? I'm going to send it to you, man, so that you can kind of look along.
Yeah, man.
First and foremost, one of the cool things about the Pitch Bible itself is that, you know, they really, really, really wear their influences on their sleeves. The way they printed and bound this thing and presented it to studio execs was that it looked like an old school Stephen King paperback.
Yeah.
I mean, worn in, amazing.
I mean, like our graphics.
Yeah, dude, right? It looks it's so crazy. Like even the detail to like $3.95 price tag. I mean, it looks like a book that any of us would have picked up off of our shelves or our older brother's shelves or our cousins who had kind of scary books or a Stephen King book and picked it up, and this is what's in there. Now, rather than just read the entire thing to everybody, which I was actually tempted to do,
this looks incredible.
It's incredible, right? I think what's interesting is some of the stuff that's kind of changed and just some of the you know, obvious details, but then not so obvious details of their influences and stuff. First and foremost, I think it's interesting to note that initially the show was going to be called Montauk. Go ahead. It sounds like you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, for those that may not know, there's a thing called the Montauk Project, which was an actual thing carried out by the government. So do a little digging and it'll...
Well, and I'm sure we're going to do an episode on this, but...
Oh, yeah.
You know, what they say in this pitch Bible, it says the Montauk Project conspiracy, and it says, everyone loves a good conspiracy. We've seen the most well-known Area 51 and the Philadelphia experiment sensationalized on film and television many times before, but the Montauk Project, one of the most bizarre conspiracies in our country's history, remains untapped. Here's a brief synopsis of what that is. In 1942, as World War II raged across the ocean, the Air Force established Camp Hero on the easternmost point of Long Island, Montauk, blighting the quaint, picturesque resort town that would serve as Peter Benchley's inspiration for Amity in Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
The base's initial objective was to protect America against possible German invasion. So it's like an easternmost point of Long Island. You know, it's strategically placed, initially just to kind of protect against the Germans. The already enormous base was later expanded during the Cold War. A long-range radar dish was added, and it became a focal point of Soviet surveillance. Around this time, the base allegedly began to conduct a series of top-secret experiments, codenamed the Montauk Project.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, some of the things that they allegedly were kind of experimenting with were like really cutting-edge science blended with some other stuff. So like things like alien contact, time travel, telepathy, alternate dimensions, mutant monsters. Apparently, it was happening in this base. So,
and real quick, like one of the things about, and again, we will cover this in the future, but one of the, I think the main thing that we know about Montauk is like, basically they were, you know, there's also speculation that like a lot of these kids were like kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them were orphans or sort of obtained in a real sort of shady way. But what we do know is that the Montauk Project was very, very heavy into like psionic abilities and developing that within kids, basically making them like super soldiers who could, you know, do things like telepathy and, you know, telekinesis, it said. So they had this thing even called like the Montauk chair, which I don't know if you know about, that it was this chair basically, and you know, you're hooked up to all this stuff, and it would like basically let you, I don't know if it was more like astral travel or like remote viewing, but basically it could make you teleport yourself like outside of space and time, which is wild. And and then the branch off comes with like there's a famous thing called the Montauk Monster that washed up on the shore of Montauk, which I mean it looks like this little demon creature.
Yeah.
And so that's when all like the mutant like creatures things kind of came from. But originally it was just really heavy into mind control, Project Monarch, that kind of thing. Like, you know, taking these kids' minds and fracturing them and to sort of access psionic abilities.
Right. And like the cool thing is like just even having heard all of that, listener, immediately it's very easy for you to just be like, oh, 11. You know?
Exactly.
I mean,
100%.
and so like it's so cool to see like them taking something just like they said that is untapped and creating the show around it. And so, you know, originally it was going to take place in Long Island, not Indiana, but I think ultimately they felt like they could get away with more sort of like sci-fi shenanigans apparently in like a fictional town. It's kind of like, I mean, on the opposite end of the spectrum, really kind of like Springfield with this instance, you know, that sort of obscure town that, is it fictional? Is it not fictional? I mean, one of the first things Woodrow asked me was like, is Hawkins a real place? You know what I mean? And I love the fact that it's not, because think about that, like in terms of your creative license, man, it's never ending.
Well, although we have like all of the main locations are down here in Georgia.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Within an hour. Like I think one of the places is like less than like 5 miles from my house, which is pretty awesome. The mall,
there's
I used
all
to go to that
kinds
mall all
of
the time.
locations. It's pretty cool. And if you're interested, you can go online and you can, I mean, it's not like a guided tour, but you can do a Stranger Things locations sort of self-tour. A lot of driving, but pretty cool.
I wonder if the change in location was to give it that like more 80s Midwest kind of like, setting.
I mean, like I think a little bit also, and again, listeners, if you didn't know this, like Atlanta, you know, became like quite the place for a lot of shows to do things. There's a lot of production studios here now and stuff because there's like a tax break that was given. And so for many years, it's been like, I mean, that's where all of Ozark is filmed, a lot of the Avengers movies. I mean, you name it, it's just a bunch. Now
the Ozark, the Birdhouse is less than 5 minutes away from my house, which is pretty cool.
And again, like I encourage you to kind of like look up this show Bible so you can just kind of see and physically see what it looks like. And immediately when you do, you're going to be like, oh yeah, that does look like something that would be rad would put out, honestly.
Right.
But again, I didn't even know this thing existed until I accidentally stumbled upon it.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm seeing it, and it looks
They have
amazing.
like pictures of Elliot from E.T. and like the actual a picture of Camp Hero Air Force Base around 1980, and they show like the big satellite dish. Yeah. They have like, you know, pictures of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Altered States, which if you've seen Altered States, you know, there's that sort of thought or tank, very similar to what 11 is kind of going in the first season, you know?
Oh, like a float tank or like a deprivation tank?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Yeah.
And so like if you've seen Altered States, you'll know that, oh yeah, boom, that's where they got that from.
Real quick, you said E.T. Did you get that post that I tagged you in on Instagram earlier today?
I don't think so.
Basically, it's like this interview where Drew Barrymore, obviously she was the little girl in E.T., she's talking to like the older cast, like the mom and stuff. And I guess, I don't know that she knew this until now, but I guess Steven Spielberg had these two guys that were like on payroll that were literally, their job was to like, anytime Drew would see E.T., like when they weren't filming, you know, they were there to like make E.T. move and like interact with her so that it like kept the character alive.
Yeah,
I thought that was incredible.
That is amazing, and I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into something pretty similar, which is really, really cool.
Cool.
Before we start digging into like the trivia of those things, I want to, you know, some of this stuff is, again, it's pretty obvious. Like, yes, of course, they like the Goonies, E.T., Stephen King, but these subtle things that like I think connected with me and you too, Tyler. But I'm sure like anybody listening that's a fan of Stranger Things, you know, maybe, especially if they're younger, or maybe it was subtle enough to where they didn't know, but like even the final logo is a cross between like Needful Things and Firestarter and
straight up 80s horror.
Oh, dude.
Well, like the glow and
oh man, so cool.
That's so class. I mean, I would imagine like we did that every single person who was like into 80s horror and just grew up in the 80s, the second that you saw that on episode 1 of season 1, it was like, oh my God, they they got it. They nailed it. This is exactly what it should be, you know?
Now, here's some things that are way different that it's kind of funny that they describe in the show Bible. Check this out. Hopper, they saw him being played by Ewan McGregor. Yeah. Or Sam Rockwell.
I mean, I can see that. Although he's a little too... I love Sam Rockwell, but he may be a little too charismatic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think, like, honestly, man, like, I think as you read these character descriptions and stuff, they did perfect. Like, the casting was perfect.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even, for example, Joyce was supposed to be more like a real thick Long Island accent, and played by, you know, they saw her being played by like Naomi Watts or like Marissa Tomei. Again, like both of those, like could have done it. I think Naomi Watts would have been like more of like a grittier, like I think their initial sort of vision for Joyce is like
totally different.
Well, it's here. I'll just read it. Just this one in particular. So Joyce, early 40s, is the single mother of Will and Jonathan. She struggles to raise them while holding down 2 low-paying jobs with long hours. She chain smokes, speaks with a thick Long Island accent, blunt manners. Despite all this, she's a loving mother who would go to incredible lengths to protect her boys. Over the course of the show, Joyce's desperation will lead her into an unexpected and rocky relationship with Hopper. Now, that sounds a little bit more gritty than...
I mean,
sort
season
of like,
1, you kind of see...
She's more like just like a nervous sort of like, you know, not so much like Long Island, like tough, like...
Yeah, no, you don't...
You know, bad manners and that kind of stuff.
But instead, you do see a little bit of that harshness on season 1 when she's like losing it because her son's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know what you mean.
I mean, yeah. You know what I'm saying, though? I feel like Naomi Watts probably could have been a little bit more like that. Marissa Tomei...
I can't see her at all in that role.
So again, I think they did well.
Oh yeah, and plus she's like, I mean, she's such a mainstay in like 80s and 90s. You know what I mean? So I think that only adds to the nostalgia factor. You know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 11 is essentially their E.T., which again is pretty obvious from that first season. Whenever they kind of dress her up, it's very reminiscent of when Drew Barrymore dresses up E.T. and, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is another great one. So Mr. Clark, remember, he's like the science teacher guy that like helps him out with the the AV club. And, he's kind of a dorky, skinny dude with like a mustache. Originally, it says, Mr. Clark, 35, is the rock star of the local middle school. Charismatic, charming, handsome, and whip smart. He's the closest thing our series has to Indiana Jones. Mr. Clark will become increasingly essential as the show moves forward, as he will be key to solving the mystery of what has happened in Montauk. He will ultimately help our characters breach the tear in Act 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Didn't get that at all.
Mm-mm.
But, I mean, I love that character.
See, it's a great character. It's so much different, though. And if you read the comics, there's a really cool sort of tie-in between him and the guy that Sean Astin plays, Bob, right, in season 2. There's a connection between those two. They went to high school together, and they were friends and played D&D together, actually.
Really?
Yeah, so kind of a cool connection there.
So did he, like, bring him... Did he have anything to do with, like, bringing him in or anything?
No.
That it was just, like, random?
It's just, like, in the comic, there's, like, something that the kids have to do, and I don't know, it's really good.
Man, that's cool.
One last kind of, like, weird thing was that, and again, this is trivia, and so you probably don't know this, but the name Terry Ives, for example, is the name of Eleven's birth mother. But in the show Bible, Terry Ives is... Well, let me see if you can guess this, listener. Terry Ives, 40, mentioned only passingly in the plot, will play an important role in episodes to come. An antisocial hermit and local movie theater projectionist with the looks of a serial killer, in parentheses, balding hair, big oval glasses. Terry is a conspiracy nut and has been investigating Camp Hero for over a decade. Although initially derided by Hopper and others, he will become an unexpected, albeit reluctant hero in the dark days ahead. He might even make a friend or two along the way. Does that sound like anybody?
I mean, definitely
Murray.
Murray, yeah.
Yeah, who is one of my favorite characters, period.
Oh, he's the best. I mean, I would say if my life would have looked a little different and I never would have married or had kids.
You would be Murray.
In 15 years, I would be Murray.
And I'd probably be Hopper.
Yeah.
What's interesting about the Hopper idea, too, and, this will be kind of like the last sort of piece on the show specifically, and then I kind of want to get into some of the trivia about the influences and stuff, like the movies and books and stuff. Hopper initially, like, they really dove real deep on, and I think this comes across relatively well in that first season, but he was a much more of a kind of drug addict.
Yeah, right.
Here's his description. It says, early 40s, and he's the chief of the Montauk Police. He grew up in Montauk, but moved to the city immediately post-graduation. He made a happy life there, but it was shattered when a tragic car accident killed his 4-year-old daughter. He retreated to his hometown and now lives a hedonistic lifestyle in a shack by the beach. He drinks heavily, chain smokes, and abuses Tuinol, which is a potent barbiturate popular at the time, which has since been banned. Hopper took the job of chief not to help others, but because it required very little of him. After all, nothing bad ever happens in Montauk, or so he thought. This changes when Will goes missing. In order to stop this evil from spreading, Hopper will have no choice but to confront the darkness of his past.
Now, I do think that I do think, and I didn't really, I had I guess forgotten about this, but whenever you like first find him and he's like hungover and there's like pills everywhere and they did lean into that a good bit on that first season.
Yeah.
And then you totally, move past it.
Right.
When 11 comes along.
Yeah. And it's cool to see that evolution of character. And you know, another thing that this speaks to me on is like the level of sort of just like world building is like a dungeon master or a game master, if you like.
It's always evolving.
It's like writing adventures and little mini stories just like this for characters that you guys might not even come across,
Right.
It's just so much fun. It's one of my favorite things about Dungeons & Dragons as a DM is the ability to be able to do that and just imagining just little, I guess, details about, that kind of color the, I don't know, like the
flavor.
Yeah, it gives it flavor, but also like the motivation for like an NPC, somebody that could be a minor character that might end up being a major character later, like in, the last phase of the campaign that I put you guys through. A lot of little minor characters that wouldn't have been anything are now like big, Yeah. Somebody that in that adventure was only written in as somebody that you just like helped. That was captured,
right.
Is now like the sheriff of the town. You know what I mean?
And all those like little callbacks are like so. At least for you and I, we've always been such fans of that. It's so rewarding, when you sort of like invest in like these details, into like these, what would typically be looked at as like throwaway characters. It's always so cool to see that like brought back around and.
Yeah, and I just love, again, to see that they are that thoughtful. And that's not to say that other show writers and creators aren't. It's just to be one of our favorite shows of all time and to have access to see kind of where it all comes from. And, I actually have a book. It's in my son's room, so I don't know. I don't know what the title is exactly, but it's like a Stranger Things book that really goes deeper into each one of the characters, each one of the things that they were influenced by.
Well, I mean, for example, I think the biggest example is Steve Harrington. Yeah. He starts off as like the totally hateable, villain, 80s villain kid who's like the, like the socialist, he's like a popular jock kid. And you like absolutely hate him. And, by now he's my favorite character.
Yeah, no, man. He's just the best, man. And my daughter has a giant crush on him, too.
We will return after these messages.
This is the Cajun Spice Ruffles Tater Chip. Now, some people might think it's too hot. No, it's not too hot. It's spicy, yeah. Now it's hot, I'll guarantee.
Cajun Spice Ruffles brand potato chips.
I gotta take a break. I wanna play in the rain and take a break. 7-Up so cool and clear.
You could win a year's worth of free travel on United Airlines, plus $25,000. Look for the 7-Up Play All Day game.
7-Up!
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show. All right, so let's dive into some of their influences and some crazy trivia about each one. Now, some of these you might know. Some of them you definitely don't. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The first time that you put on Stranger Things, immediately, it's one of the things that they capture so well and really kind of lean on is one of the reasons why Stephen King has been and is one of my favorite writers.
Mm-hmm.
He oftentimes, in so many of his stories, I'm talking about Stephen King for now, utilizes like the friend group as like the power that can fight evil. Something that you learn in the movie It, for example, is that like if you separate the group, now D&D listeners, please pay attention to this. As a DM, this is very good advice. Don't separate the party. You're stronger together than you are alone.
Right.
And even so that's like the broad idea for a lot of Stephen King stuff. Stand By Me, which a lot of people don't know that Stephen King wrote that. It. Dreamcatcher. Like this theme is recurring in so many of his books and stories. Heck, even the Gunslinger series, man.
Yeah.
obviously he wasn't the only one. That's not the only person in the world that recognizes that trope. I mean, the Goonies, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Duffer Brothers utilize this, and they do it so well. And so some of those movies are obvious influences.
Mm-hmm.
Here's something about it that I didn't know. And I'm talking about the one that was the TV miniseries in the 80s. Number one, the miniseries was going to be directed by George Romero. He'd even, listen to this dude, he'd even prepared thousands of pages of notes worth of scripts, notes, just everything. And in the end, didn't do it because of scheduling conflicts and the sort of heavily shortened runtime. Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Stand By Me. This is an interesting, a couple of interesting little tidbits here. Rob Reiner, who was the director of Stand By Me, kept making the young actors cry for real. So for one scene, for example, he told River Phoenix to think of a time an adult let him down. And Phoenix became unconsolable. On another occasion, he exasperatedly yelled at them, cueing them to cry. And action, you know? Jesus.
Man, that's intense. And Rob Reiner's awesome, by the way.
Yeah, oh yeah. Some great movies, man.
Mm-hmm.
Also in Stand By Me, according to Kiefer Sutherland, in an interview that he did, the production had to be shut down for 2 days because this is amazing. Now, in Stand By Me, you remember the chubby kid? He's not so chubby anymore, but Jerry O'Connell, you know, played the chubby kid in Stand By Me.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be shut down because Jerry O'Connell snuck into a hippie fair. I'm using some air quotes right now. You can't see them. And unknowingly bought some, quote, funny cookies.
Oh, boy.
They ended up finding him lost and crying in a park.
Oh, my gosh.
So in other words, he accidentally ate some, you know, pot cookies and didn't know they were pot cookies. And was just like, man, these are good. Chomp, 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 chomped right through them.
And how old would he have been? Like,
oh, dude, I don't know, 12, maybe,
11,
tops?
12?
Yeah, dude. Isn't that wild?
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, I've never heard of that.
The movie Firestarter, which was also a Stephen King book.
Mm-hmm. Andrew Barrymore.
Andrew Barrymore, yeah. The way you said it first, it sounded like you said Andrew Barrymore.
Andrew Marrymore. In this reality.
In this reality. So this is actually going to be a John Carpenter movie. But Universal went with Mark L. Lester instead after they went with Mark Lester because after The Thing sort of commercial failure, which is so funny to me because it's one of my favorite movies, man.
Yeah.
You know, Mark L. Lester did Commando and some other stuff. But man, just imagine if Firestarter was done by John Carpenter. Would have been
so weird to think about. Yeah.
Oh, you were talking about E.T. earlier. Listen to this, dude. This is so freaking cool. And I can almost guarantee you, this isn't a fact, but this is just, I think that this doesn't really happen much anymore. E.T. was shot chronologically with the puppeteers hidden from the cast, like you were talking about, so that the children actually developed a caring relationship with this alien creature, man. So when the final scene happened, man, remember again, the movie is being shot chronologically. So when it's time to say goodbye, the kids were really saying goodbye to something they consider like a friend, man. So those emotions are conveyed on screen.
That's amazing.
Now, I don't know, this is kind of slightly, you know, a little bit, not off topic, but the kid that plays Elliot, Henry Thomas, I don't know if you listening have ever seen his audition tape for this movie. But I encourage you all to get on YouTube, because you can find it now, and watch his audition. And keep in mind that this kid was so young, and the insane amount of talent this kid has.
Yeah,
he's like, I don't even know. This is one of those things that you're like, hey man, yeah, I could be in a movie. And then you watch this kid. You see, like, it's just incredible. Go watch that now. Let me see. Got a couple more here, man. I mean, this is for you, Tyler. Being a graphic designer, you'll understand this. But the original, I don't know if you're familiar with, or the audience familiar with, the original Shining, or the cover for The Shining. But Stanley Kubrick, and at the time, the legendary sort of Hollywood graphic designer Saul Bass went through like up to 300 ideas for the movie poster. Apparently, Bass wasn't fond of the final poster's color and proposed to make it red instead of yellow. But I gotta say, I'm glad they went with the yellow because it is somehow more haunting.
Yeah, and also it's. I've always looked at that as like that had to be like some weird like foreign version or something because it just looks so odd compared to what, because you know obviously there's a ton of like little like significant,
it's like pointillism kind of. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. But I'm saying like when you think of it, you clearly think of like red. So that yellow is just sort of like I don't know. It just feels so abstract to me.
Yeah. Yep.
It's awesome.
That's what I'm saying. Like for some reason, it's like, you know, kind of scarier.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more trivia about E.T. Steven Spielberg considered different titles. One called Upon a Star and the Landing. Another one was E.T. and Me, which I don't know if you guys remember Mac and Me, but
yeah.
Man,
that's crazy.
Now, listener, did you know this? Did you know that Freddy Krueger has the Greatest Hits album? In case you're wondering, the cassette on eBay is roughly around $40 to $50. Not really worth it. I bet you can find the MP3s somewhere. But
wait a minute, what do you mean great? Is he like singing?
It's like a
or just like a compilation. Man, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I think I don't know that he's like singing. Hold on, let me see. Let's see if we can find it.
For some reason, it sounds familiar, but I think
I'm telling you, that Dutch kid had a copy of it. It came out in 1987, so timing wise, it tracks. I'm almost positive it did because do you remember there's that Fat Boy song that's probably on there?
Well, I was thinking of like Nightmare on My Street, like The Fresh Prince.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a vague familiarity with that.
Like the bad news is can't find it on Spotify, but maybe we can look up the track listing. Hold on.
And what is it called?
Freddy Krueger's or Freddy's Greatest Hits.
Jeez.
Okay. It's got songs called Dance or Else, In the Midnight Hour, Don't Sleep, All I Have to Do Is Dream, Obsession, Wooly Bully. Okay. Down in the Boiler Room, getting a little on the nose there. Let's see.
Yeah, so these have to be like songs, right?
Yeah. So it says originally released in 1987 at the height of the Freddy craze. This record contains 9 tracks, a mix of covers from the likes of Wilson Pickett, the Everly Brothers, etc., and original songs and instrumentals. The album is everything you expect it to be: screaming 80s drum machines and distortion-filled electric guitars being drowned out by synthesizers. Over the top of these songs is Robert Englund doing the voice and maniac laughing of Freddy Krueger.
But he's not like singing. He's just sort of...
The actual music making was done by the Elm Street Group, that's in quotes, who were actually much respected studio musicians working for RIC Records.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think he just like talks every now and then. I don't know, man. God, I got to tell you.
You really piqued my interest on this.
I really kind of want this. Do you think I can find it on CD, maybe?
Maybe Columbia House has it.
Maybe I can get it on the next installment of BMG Music.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember
that's
that?
Another one. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's on like Now That's What I Call Music, number 60.
Oh, man, now that's what I call music. I mean, you can get it on vinyl for like $50, $70.
You said what year? 87?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Here we go. $40 tape. Anyways, we'll find it. I'll try to find it.
Yeah.
Or buy it. Not sure yet. Anybody looking for Christmas ideas? Oh, my God, dude. This one, we thought about doing an episode just about this movie. And I know one of our listeners, Christian out in Tennessee, knows about this as well. May have even suggested it. But the movie Poltergeist, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened around that film.
Yeah.
A lot. And so we'll dive into that another time. But this is something I did not know even when kind of reading about all the crazy stuff that happened there. Listen to this, dude. Jo Beth Williams, who plays the mom in the movie Poltergeist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that there's these scenes where she's in the mud and there's these like skeletons that like pop out or whatever, right?
Oh, I know where you're going with this, yeah.
The skeletons were actual human skeletons, not props.
Yep.
Now, she didn't find out until afterward, but wow.
Yeah, well, and from what I've heard, at the time, it was more expensive to get fake skeletons that were lifelike than it was just to go down to your local. I think they got them from like a local like autopsy or like embalming school.
Jeez Louise,
which is like pretty terrifying
and just kind of gross, you know?
Yeah.
Pretty weird. I mean, like, all in all, again,
hey man, I love it.
Such a this show, no matter, I mean, it's so interesting and cool to see the level of detail that they put into kind of just reminding us of our childhood. And it's, you know, part of the sort of our mission here as well on the show is to, yes, of course, talk about the crazy stuff that continues to happen in our strange world, but also just like give you guys an inkling of, you know, where we kind of came from in case you're a listener that perhaps is a little younger than us. And for those of you that are around our age, you know exactly what we're talking about. There's that certain vibe, you know, there's Instagram or social media posts that'll be like, if you can't smell how this living room smells, then you didn't grow up in the 80s. And you know, that kind of thing.
Oh, I love those.
Or the reality of going over to somebody's house and their couch being completely covered in hard plastic. I mean, there's just little things about the 80s that, boy, if you didn't grow up in it, you know, you kind of take it for granted. So anyway, hats off to the Duffer brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, the team involved with the Stranger Things experience, again, they're not a sponsor. I wish to God they were. But it's something that if you're a Stranger Things fan, you need to experience this. It's so amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, not just the Stranger Things experience, but I think we should also say, like, just the show, anybody who has worked on the show, you can tell that it's a real labor of love because, like, down to the most minute, like, you know, period, like, bowls and plates that, like, we had at our house, you know, like, it's just the level of detail is amazing. So all of like the set designers and you know, all that stuff is hats off to all those people.
Yeah. And they bring that level of care to the experience as well. So it's really cool. Got a little something
cool,
for
dude.
you.
Yeah. Wow. That is
so there
amazing.
you go, man. That's the Freddy.
God, I love just the idea of Robert Englund like being in a studio and just and laugh.
Yeah. They're like, okay, well, hey, that was a good one. Could we get another take this time? You know, feel it, vibing. Okay. Do you think he wore the glove for that?
Well, that's what's funny is as soon as I said that, like I picture him in like full makeup and
full deal.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of him, another great little thing about season 4 is that he makes a cameo.
He does. And it does. There are some nods to Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, all that being said, thank you for hanging out with us for another episode of That Would Be Rad, your favorite podcast. We are over on Instagram. If you want to find us on social media, feel free to jump in that comment section or shoot us a DM if you want to tell us something. If you have your own story or your own local urban legend or anything you just want to get off your chest, you can send us a DM or you can send it in more long form to thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com. If you would like to tell us a story in your very own just rich voice, you can do that directly from the site. Our site is thatwouldberadpodcast.com. And you can send the voicemail straight from the site and you can leave us some 5-star reviews, which we would really appreciate it if you would. And you can find any podcatcher that we're on over there on the site, and it's sort of a one-stop shop. But anyway, all that being said, get out there and tell one single friend about the show. It works wonders. Like I said before, go to whatever, whether it's Apple or Spotify, give us that 5-star review. It really, really helps out. I guess that's about it. You got anything else, Woody?
I think that's it, man.
All right. Well, we love you. We appreciate you. And as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes.
Clouds in a time where I just needed some sunshine. You were already dead before you became a ghost. You always said our future would be a parade of flowers, but now all that's left is a single rose. That's the way it goes.
Access granted.
How we doing?
Oh my God, I knew it was going to happen.
Ah, it's all good, dude.
I had to run down and get her
popsicle.
A croissant. I'm hungry.
Love it. Can I have a snack? That's all we hear at our house.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So,
I'm ready, and this is for you.
Hear the happy feet dancing to the beat of the Freddy. Gonna guide in front, make a line in back, then you're ready. Pick your feet up.
All right, man. Oh, wait. We got a 3, 2, 1 stop.
We sure do, pal.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Here, star.